And a good morning to you. Welcome inside the bottom line. Glad to have you here on a Tuesday morning. I'm showing 57 degrees, going up to about 85 today. Still calling for 90 on Thursday, so go ahead and get ready for that. Full house here today. Mr. Rembert's in the house, as well as Andrew Williams is joining us as well. We got the show kicked off about 5 minutes ago, and I had to get them to stop because we wanted to get it leave something for the air. But that's what happens. You start talking, and everything goes from there. A couple different topics that are related. What we were talking about, what we got was the guy's name's DJ Burns, right?
Yes, sir.
He is the big kid that played for NC State. There's general managers in the NFL that are salivating to get him because he's a big man, 6'7", 6'8", 300 pounds, and got great feet. Yep. So that's what makes him attractive as an offensive tackle. Morning, Richie. That was one of the things that nobody ever looked at me to play defense because I didn't have that mean streak.
Right.
Okay, but I primarily was looked at for offense because of my size and my feet, and I could move. And back in the day when I played, I was a pulling guard, and so you had to have the feet, the quickness, and that's what they see with this kid. But if I remember right when they were talking about it, I don't think he's played football since 7th grade, 8th grade. He hasn't played in a long time, and he's not interested. And he's not an NBA prospect because not that he can't play that position, but there are no positions like that anymore. That kid, everybody that comes out now, whether you're 6'3" or 7'3", you've got to be able to spread the floor, shoot it from anywhere. There's very few back-to-the-basket players left in the NBA. That's why I like when I do watch college basketball, and especially when you watch those Final Four teams that were this year especially, they still had position basketball. Oh, yeah. They had a point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. Big man played back to the basket like Edey did, like Burns did. Now, Edey's got a little more outside game than what Burns did. But, it's one of those things to where the NBA has changed so much about what the game is. And really, to me, basketball's not basketball if you don't have a half-court game.
Right.
Running game, running gun, always fast breaking, throw the ball down the floor. That's not basketball. You like to see some of that, but I want to see basketball. I want to see it touch multiple hands. I want to see people move. I want to see people work to get open. You don't see it when you get out of college. And I think now, for whatever reason, Danny Hurley has taught everybody that if you want to compete for a national championship, here's what you got to have. You got to have kids that can play the position. You got to have kids that are willing to stay and commit to doing that. And even though he did use the portal, sometimes if you miss on a kid, you can use the portal to fill in a spot. Right. But he doesn't build his team based on portal players. He doesn't build. I don't know if he's got a player that is even an NBA caliber player. And for him and those kids, they don't care. You look at the number that go, it is so small to make it in the NBA. Yeah. But if you put the right kids together with the right skill sets, you can compete for championships. And now they're starting to see that. I'm going to waste my life and throw away my education when I'm not going to make a living in the NBA. Now, if they want to go to Europe and,
and that's what
around,
they do. And
that's okay.
Yeah, and that's good.
And that's the exact comment he made about his players when he gets pro-style, professional basketball players.
Yeah.
That aren't, like you say, going to be high prospects for sure in the NBA, but they're more about the team and
they're basketball players,
and European players.
Yeah, and it works.
Well, the European players, the big difference with them is they have the ability. They still teach fundamentals and practice fundamentals, and they practice more than they play.
That's right. Right. That's the biggest difference. And Jay Wright, even though Hurley has won back-to-back titles, Jay Wright is who comes to mind in the modern era that was able to, and I say modern era, last, 8 years, 10 years, whatever, that was able to encompass that without worrying about a one and done or, all these other challenges that the other coaches, Calipari, Williams, Krzyzewski, all of them had to, kind of cater and adapt to, right? They just came in and said, look, we're going to play this style of basketball. We're going to try to keep these kids around a while. And, it was remarkable. I mean, the national champion, I think Wright won a couple there. And, they did it through slowing the game down, run the half-court offense, like you said. I think they beat – was it Carolina they beat a few years ago in the national championship?
Yeah, Villanova.
I'm sorry, it's Villanova. Yeah, I'm sorry, not UConn. Villanova, yeah. And what he did is he just basically took that running game away, and as soon as Carolina run down there and real fast and score, guy go over, he'd take the ball out of bounds, he'd throw that guy, he'd walk it up the floor. And then they run their pattern offense, which is fine. And that's the way he did that. So, those type players, are more fundamental, like you said, kind of like the European players. And a lot of coaches will talk about that now. Our kids here in the U.S. play all the time, but prepare little.
Well, Calherd talks about it a lot. When you look at the NBA draft, there's no American players to get excited about because there's not any. They're all Europeans.
They're down the list.
Yeah. I mean, you got to go way down the list, not in the top five. He said it's been a long time since there happened in the top five.
Yeah.
Go back to UConn for just a second. You talk about when Carolina signs a player or Duke signs a player, they talk about this is a McDonald's All-American kid, this, that, and the other. I looked this up because I was thinking I was right on this. You know the last year that UConn had a McDonald's All-American player on their roster?
It's probably the women's team.
2004 in the men's team. 2004. And here they've won 3 championships.
Oh, yeah.
Under Dan Hurley.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you that you don't have to
I think UConn and those guys, they recruit guys that are basketball first, money second. And the Kentuckys and North Carolinas that do stuff, they get money first and basketball second.
I wonder if Calipari changes his philosophy at Arkansas because you're not going to have one-and-done players won't come to Arkansas and play.
I think, well, that was a good topic you guys had last night. G and I were listening on the way back from the game, and that there were a lot of good points made with that. But I think in the case of Calipari, you know who you're getting, and you are getting somebody that can win. The difference between, what he did early on at Kentucky and what happened years later was he was winning national championships with the one-and-dones early on. The last 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it's been, there's been early exits. Now, I believe, after a look at this, that giving players that extra year in COVID had more to do with these teams having developmental players and winning national championships than it did the other part, because we have players that are playing 5 and 6 years.
Yep.
We've never had that before because they didn't have that opportunity. And it's just like they gave them that, and allowing people to move around and do these things. Well, yeah, but this kid was a Division II player. Yeah, he worked on his game, and then he got good and saw,
opportunity.
I got an opportunity to go to Division I. Well, he comes in, he's a sharpshooter, and that was the whoever it was, whatever. But it's just so different with that. Now, what's interesting to me is this now going to be the sustainable model now that the 5 and 6 year players are washing out of the system? I don't know that it is.
Yeah, but here's the deal. Even before COVID, if you looked and took the field as a whole, the teams that had the most success for, let's just say, 2/3, not to the Elite 8, okay, but the teams that made it to the Sweet 16, the majority of them were teams that had players that had played together and had older members.
Yeah, Wisconsin.
I don't think we need to look at that. I would like to see that. I'm not saying you're wrong.
No.
I would like to see that, because what I remember is the great players that were one and done, it may be two and done, whatever, from Carolina, Duke, okay, Kansas, Kentucky. I remember that being the run from like 2000, whatever, 10, and Calipari basically got to Kentucky until COVID hit. I've only
it happened. Duke won it in 2015 with a younger team with Justice Winslow and those guys.
And those guys
beat Sam Decker and Wisconsin. They were all seniors.
I just think this is something new now, because these players had a year or two extra to refine their skills, and we're seeing that it was much better basketball.
Oh, Houston's a prime example of it.
Right.
Those were men
Lanny's point.
on that team,
yes.
not college kids.
No. And to Lanny's point, I mean, the refinement of the game was so different last year, especially this year, and it was so much more enjoyable to watch. You know, I just, you know, it was really, really good basketball.
This is one of the things. Now, I know you've still got the COVID year, but you're going to lose that after this year.
Yes.
It's going to get back to the normal cycle.
Yeah, it needs to.
The average age of the Final Four teams this year, UConn was the youngest at 21.3. Mm-hmm. Purdue was 21.7. Alabama was 22, and NC State was 22.4.
Holy cow!
Wait a minute. I'll give you one better than that. Cowherd was talking about there are 4 or 5 NBA teams that the average age of that team is less than what's in college.
Than NC State.
Yeah, so it was like 19, 20 years old.
All the Final Four teams would not have any been the youngest in the NBA. There were several teams that were younger in the NBA.
Yeah.
That's
and
borderline insane.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Robert
saying.
Dillingham is a prime example. You know, he's going to go to the NBA. He's going to pull their age way down.
Yeah.
That dude's 19 years old.
Okay, now I want to piggyback off that. Okay,
I like you.
I want to piggyback off that.
I like him a lot
Because how it ties into the NFL. Not from an age standpoint, but when you look at the NBA, you look at MLB. I don't care if you were the first person taken in the MLB draft. You are probably not starting in the game on the big team unless they've got an injury off the bat. They got somebody that you can fill this position. Those kids go through a process of the minors, even though they may do it on an express train and get through in a year, come up through all the systems if they're an exceptional athlete. Okay, the NBA does the same thing. The big kid, the Wembanyama, Victor, they limited him to like 18, 19 minutes a game because he wasn't ready, and he's the best thing that anybody's ever seen.
Yes,
I mean he's gonna turn out to be the GOAT. Point I'm making is when you go to the NFL, if you're a high draft pick,
you play right
they
away.
expect you to start now. Now, that'll work in some places. An offensive tackle, an offensive guard, a defensive tackle, you can maybe do that. Because the other side is you've already got your man body when you get to the NFL. You're 21.
But Lanny, explain that. I mean, you played at that higher level, okay? I mean, for all intents and purposes, you don't get hurt. And I'm not tooting. I mean, I'm always trying to be truthful here. You potentially have an opportunity at the next level, okay, because of what you could do. Do they do that in the NFL because it's such a short lifespan? They're trying to get all they can get out of them instead of worrying about developmental because they may get hurt.
Well, that's why they play so early.
And that's what I'm saying. Is that why? I mean, you know how. I mean, you were down there.
And if you look at it, if you look at it now, I don't know what the average, I won't say lifespan, but contract span of an NFL player. It was about 7 years. And I think it's under that, especially depending upon position you play. For example, they have tried to change, and they're not going to change it because they've already got a contract in place. They wanted to try to change the contract length rules for certain positions, especially like a running back. You take a running back that came out of Alabama or Michigan or a team that runs the ball a lot. They don't have a good enough body to get that second big contract. They don't make any money because teams are getting rid of them. They don't want to sign. You look how many top running backs never get that second contract they had with the same team that drafted them. They'll send them somewhere else because somebody's got a bigger need than that, and the team that they're on has got enough players behind them that they won't feel it that much to interchange and keep that cap money down. But running backs are they're almost disposable. I hate to say it, but they are.
Yeah.
But it's because they've taken such a pounding. I'm still amazed at how well Christian McCaffrey has held up.
He may be the unicorn.
But remember and that's a good point where he is now. But think about how much he missed when he did not have
I know.
that line. And the question I've got for you and Andrew is this. Is the reason running backs today don't last as long is because linemen focus, and not to their I'm just talking about the modern game, focus more on pass blocking than they do run blocking. Because if we look back in the 70s, 80s, 60s, whatever you want to do, all of us sitting here, remember running backs, and there were great running backs, but there were more of them that played longer. Why did Emmett play so long? Why did Jim Brown play? Why did O.J. play? Franco Harris, Tony Dorsett. Today, we can't name backs like that in this game, and it's because we throw the football everywhere.
Right.
So people are taking poundings because they're not getting between the tackles there in open field and finding out that, oh, my God, that guy on the end is actually faster than I am.
Yeah.
He's going to rip my skull
Yeah.
when I get out there and make a cut. Is that why?
Yeah.
There is a lot to this.
Well, take the flip side of that to back that up. What kind of quarterback would Roger Staubach, Bart Starr, Dan Marino, Joe Montana, had they been if they had the same passing mentality, game plan-wise, as the quarterbacks today?
How about Johnny Unitas?
Right. Look what they did, and they didn't throw the ball 15, 18 times a game. That was it.
Anyway.
Not 40 and 45 times a game, and shorter season, and didn't throw the ball nearly as much, but yet these are iconic quarterbacks. So that's why I struggle with comparing eras, what I call eras of football, because the game's not the same.
Are the running backs smaller now than they used to be?
No.
Well,
the only big bruisers you had back in the day was
Bettis and
no, I'm going further back to that. Larry Zonka.
Yeah.
Riggins
and was it Larry Brown?
Earl
was number
Campbell.
43 way back in the day. Earl Campbell.
But see, I think the backs, we would have bigger backs if they ran between the tackles.
Right.
Because that's how you got your, 2 and 3 and 4 yards. Mm-hmm. Butch and I talked about that when, this has been like close to 30 years ago, but just in those, conversations in the coaching office and things like that, talking about when I was trying to learn the history of, backs and who did what it made and this kind of thing, just listening. And he said, he's talking about Antoine. And he said, you could give him the ball and he'd go between the tackles, or you could give him a toss sweep and he'd go out in the corner and kill a corner. Mm-hmm. It was just different, with that. He said, but the focus was getting up inside and then being able to get outside, even as a big back. And I think that's what, Franco Harris wasn't a small dude.
No.
Earl Campbell.
Yeah.
He was as good as an open field runner, even though he was huge. But I just think you bring up a great point about these players playing so early and the focus being on right now versus when Noel was a head coach, Hank Stram. Even going
Bud
back
Grant
to Bud
at
Grant,
Minnesota.
It's almost like they had player development because there wasn't all this, moving around.
But the other side of it is the big thing about it. If you go back, and I'm going to say, I think it's as recent as 20 years ago, the college game and the pro game were pretty much the same. Now there's not a lot of similarities between the games.
No, you're right, because they're trying to turn the pro game into what the college game can do, but you can't do that.
They can't because you've got it's just like you said, you've got a 240-pound back that's coming. Well, you've got a 240-pound safety waiting on.
Yeah.
Right.
There's more Steve Atwaters
that's just
today.
as fast or faster.
Yeah, that's true.
You go back and look.
Atwaters today.
Look at Shaq Thompson.
Oh,
at the Panthers.
Yeah. Oh,
he was a safety in college.
Oh, yeah.
Plays outside linebacker.
Yes.
Now you've got that hybrid that those players can interchange. So let me take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a second.
Whether it's a sit-down meal or a call-in for the drive-thru, Brookwood Cafe and Catering is the answer. A variety of meats, vegetables, and desserts cooked daily, or a hot sandwich from the grill, they have what you're looking for to satisfy your taste buds. If you need catering from 5 to 500, Brookwood has you covered as well. Stop by Brookwood Cafe and Catering at 202 Providence Mill Road in Maiden. Don't forget breakfast daily till 11 a.m. Open Tuesday 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., Wednesday through Saturday 6 a.m. till 8 p.m., and Sunday from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Call 828-428-8944 to place your order today.
If you ask around, you'll find Burke Mortuary has a reputation for excellence and commitment to value. They've built a reputation of trust for more than 35 years. Burke Mortuary is proud to offer personal attention, meaningful tributes, and the area's most affordable prices. They're also proud to offer you beautiful, state-of-the-art facilities. It's the perfect place to honor your loved one. So when choosing a funeral home, the choice is easy. Choose Burke Mortuary with locations in Maiden and Newton.
Covenant Church began as a vision of just over 100 people in 1984. Since then, Covenant Church has grown and currently located at 2168 Gastonia Highway in Lincoln. The Sunday schedule includes early morning worship at 8:30, Sunday school at 9:45, and morning worship at 10:45. Their ministries extend beyond Sunday. Visit their website at www.covenantchurch.church to see all they have to offer, and better yet, stop by and see for yourself. Covenant Church may be just what you're looking for a new church home. First Federal Savings Bank has been serving Lincoln County since 1940. And as it has been from the beginning, customer service is a priority to First Federal Savings Bank. They want to get to know you by name. First Federal Savings Bank has the convenience, the products, and the services that the larger banks have, but with hometown people that you see throughout your community. Stop in and visit one of their 4 convenient locations and see what First Federal Savings Bank has to offer you. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Untangling your headphones, finding the right remote, saying goodbye to your favorite shirt that hasn't fit in 10 years. Why are simple things sometimes so complicated? Thankfully, with Auto Owners, insurance doesn't have to be one of them. Auto Owners works with independent agents who live in your community and answer when you call, so you can worry about more important things, like finding a new favorite shirt. That's simple human sense.
Call Mooney Insurance in Maiden or East Lincoln Insurance in Denver or visit mooneyinsurance.com. Have you thought about when you would like to retire? One of your major assets is planning for retirement is time, and you lose a little of it each day. The longer you wait to start accumulating capital for retirement, the harder it's going to be. How should you plan for retirement? Start by calculating approximately how much capital you will need at retirement, and then estimate how much you will have to put away each year. Finally, carefully choose the investments in which you will invest. Stiefel Nicholas can assist you. Call 4 Rembert today at 828-624-7300. Stiefel Nicholas, member SIPC, and the New York Stock Exchange. And welcome back.
Get that Jim Tressel look.
Minus the tie. You got to have the tie.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the tie.
Got to have the tie.
Yeah. I couldn't remember his name for a second.
You got to have the tie.
I tell you what, man, he's one of the most underrated and not talked about. And the things that he got dismissed for today is just normal stuff.
Well, that's the way it is.
He's a terrible
everywhere.
person. Yeah. Look what he did, and he couldn't. You know, it's kind of like when we were kids riding our bike all over town. The further you got outside of town with your bike, the more of a rebel you were in the eyes of the other parents. Oh, he's way too far from home. I'm like, first of all, how do you know where he is to start off with? There ain't no way to, communicate with him unless you go out and look for him. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's just a rebel. I can't believe that kid ride his bike that far. I'm like, what in the hell are you talking about?
Let me ask you this question. We were talking about the player development, all the things that's happening. One of the big one of the things that David Stern, former commissioner of the NBA, is famous for is he understood the value of the name on the back.
Yes, he did. Right.
Instead of the name on the front.
Great.
Now, like everything else, now that pendulum has swung too far because now you pretty well got a group of individuals.
And I don't blame them. And I don't blame the individuals.
They allowed it to happen.
The adults are the ones that are supposed to be in charge, and we hear that all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Remember, we always hear that in politics. Well, the adults need to be in charge. Anytime somebody says something like that, you need to look at the exact opposite. And that's what's happened here, Lenny, to your point.
And the other side of it was, go back and look at your NBA teams that were quote-unquote dynasties. They didn't move around.
No.
The Celtics, the Pistons, the Bulls. I mean, these were teams that nucleus of players stayed because they were making money, but they also wanted to play for championships. I just think there's too many players in the NBA that just want their money. I need my shots. I need my looks. Not how's the team doing. I got to have the ball. Right. And we got a few receivers that's getting that way in the NFL. That
Coach Prime said it yesterday.
You're not targeting me enough. You're not targeting me enough.
He said Travis Hunter and his sons would only play for the Cowboys, the Chiefs. He gave about 5 teams: Philadelphia Eagles, the Atlanta Falcons, and one of them.
Steelers, one of them.
I don't know. But he said that's the 5 they'll play. He said he kind of basically says that's the 5 they'll be allowed to play for.
Good. Well, good for him.
I was like, okay.
I understand that.
Get you.
100%.
But
God, man, that's a great point.
That's the thing.
Wow.
I like that, but at the same time, and it's everything that we do that gets skewed too much to one side. For example, NIL and everything's the same thing. It went to, if it had some control, you could have managed it. But when you just opened it up, shotgunned it out there, just like they did with the NBA, the other thing that I didn't realize, that I heard somebody talk about, in the NBA, you can get so many players are entitled to get what's called a mega contract or super contract, which is a max deal. But you got to have certain measurable, certain numbers individually to qualify for that super deal. That's all they're interested in. I mean,
well, how do you bring that into balance? This is the way you do it, I think. Let's take education for an example. All right. Jeff Taylor, all right, one of the guys that, we love Jeff. He's a good dude. He's doing a lot. He was in education a long time. I think he's on the school board, or he is on the school board now. All right. He is someone that stayed in education for the duration, saw the good, bad, the ugly, the great, all the wonderful things and the things that need to be fixed. All right. You and I were in it, and we're like, this is not going the direction I want it to go. So what do? Get out. So we feel like we can make a difference based on what we were trying to bring to the table. So the way you fix this thing that's going on now is you take the people that have been in a long time and seen those things, all the different, good, bad, different, and then you take the ones that got away from it because of what was going on, and you put them in the room together. You say, okay, you've seen it a long time. You've seen it all these other ways. These are the reasons that we didn't like the way it was. How do we get it fixed? I think you can apply that as well in this situation. The problem is in college, that control is not yet being relented to the people that could do that. That was the whole idea behind the selection committee for football. The problem was it turned almost into a political stance about things instead of picking the 4 truest teams, which was the whole point.
Right.
And it's not that things weren't debatable and there weren't a lot of good points or even some bad ones made. But I think if you just have people that have been doing it a long time and only those people, then the status quo kind of sets in and you just kind of just get through it.
The only problem that I have with that, and this is where it came. Good morning, Wayne.
But Jeff is one of the, and the reason I bring him in is because Jeff, if you set him in, he will listen, right? And he will try to understand instead of listening to react. And that's kind of the example saying you got to have somebody like and I know it's a local thing, but it's a good example. You got to have somebody like a Jeff. You got to have, some Lannies in there. And get in so you, and I'm not saying anything's wrong here. I'm saying if it was applied to this in order to get it fixed.
But here's where the problem comes from with the selection committee, and I'll put that in reference to the way Jeff is. Jeff sits on the board, and he removes his biases and listens. You had
as
members,
good as anybody.
You had members on the selection committee that couldn't remove those biases because of their background. And you need coaches in there, but you got coaches that kind of hold some internal grudges they'd never talk about, but they've got some biases in there. That's why I don't like human interaction in it. I want it, from my standpoint, I want that stuff to be purely statistical. Because you can't skew the statistics.
See, this is the thing, though. You can't tell me if you get Roy Williams and Coach K in a room and say, we want you to pick the 64 teams, that when they got done.
They give you the 64 best teams.
Right. That there's no question that, it's not, I'm putting Duke higher than this or Carolina higher. They're going to lay it out there because people trust them because of the type of people they are versus they bring value of significance instead of just success. And therefore, with significance, you develop a trust with people because that's what you're striving for and not success. That's just a byproduct of significance, right?
It goes back to what you said. They don't want to just be right. They want to get it right.
They want to get it right.
But everybody can't remove their biases and do that. Right. That's the problem.
Which, if you haven't seen the interview that they did with those two guys together, it's excellent.
I know, but I told you when I was at ACC Media Day basketball, we were down at whatever the high-dollar hotel is in Charlotte, and in a ballroom. And Coach K, I had never been around him, was sitting at a table, and there were 20 reporters sitting around. It was an open question, just a chit-chat thing. You thought you were sitting there with your grandpa.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't a guy that you see on the sidelines.
He's good. He's got nothing to hide.
Yeah, and so
he's
that's where. But you can't get that all the time.
But Coach K was like that back. He took over in Duke in the early mid '80s. Mm-hmm. But a young lady that I dated in college was an interior design major down in East Carolina. Well, she worked with a firm down in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Okay, for the summer, did an internship. That firm or company was redoing Coach K's beach house.
Right.
And she worked directly with Coach K, basically his wife, but Coach K too. And she said, you would never know that this was this is after they won a couple now, back-to-back, whatever it was, titles or whatever, right? This is like 93, whatever. And she said that, like, they talked about how important it was to make sure that the house was done appropriately so the players could come down and get away for a couple of days, and because they, with all the stresses they have, they can go down there and hide basically, right, because it was before these. And she said they were just like you would never know it. Mm-hmm. And so this is not something that he just became
right.
Like in 2010 or 11 as he started getting older. He's been like that his whole life, and that is a life. And and this is my new thing, a life of significance. But that's what he's done. And unfortunately, there's too many other factors that are coming into decision-making. I would feel the same way. Roy Williams and him, I would love to see them on a panel and them just pick stuff. But I would feel the same way about someone that I don't know near as much about, which is John Wooden, know what he's done, but what a wonderful person he is, right? Nolan Richardson at Arkansas, all those years, right? I mean, you just go on and on. But it just seems like there's so much controversy in football that they just can't get the playoff system right because they use appeasement instead of facts. And that never works.
But they're going to get there.
Yeah, instead of getting to the root of the problem and fixing it.
Right. But the other side of it is, and this is why college football is broken and has got to be fixed, and you talk about it all the time, they do not have a central authority, control person, control group, whatever it is, and that doesn't come till you start getting into contracts and stuff like that, because then you can change it. But the NCAA is never going to get to that, but they're going to lose the horses is what I'm afraid is going to happen. The NCAA is going to become everything but top-tier football.
Well, what's different today about it than it was? The problem is they're trying to interject things into it that have nothing to do with playing football.
Right.
Just like the NBA. We have, a couple of superstar players, one that's been playing a long, long time, that's all the time trying to prove, why he's the best player ever or deserves to be this. When you have to explain why you are, then you're not.
That's right. Yeah.
Things speak for themselves.
That's exactly right. If what you've done or what you accomplish,
college football showed you there's no substitution for leadership.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think the Bible says where there's no vision, people perish.
That's right.
If you're watching college football, perish because there's no real vision or leadership there.
Well,
it's kind of just throw money at it.
But here's the deal: everybody that's involved in it, that's all they want.
Right.
They've got the wrong people in charge and not looking at the betterment of the game.
Yes.
Looking out best for the players and the coaches.
And guess who's doing that? Division II football.
Well, everything but one.
Juju made good points about LR and like listening to that. How they're trying to make sure Stephen was all about that. Obviously, about the process. But I was at Mars Hill this weekend watching them play. And I had a chance to talk to AD, Rick Baker, which I've known for 30 years. He's an Avery County boy, but been at Mars Hill for, 20-some years. And Rick said the thing that they're focusing on with their, not only at Mars Hill, but also within that large conference they got, because they got a lot of teams in SEC. He said, we are trying to bring an overall experience for these young people coming in so they can, have an opportunity to, either be on the national championship clogging team up there. I mean, he was going through the whole gambit.
Yeah.
Whether it be theater, out here on the baseball or softball field. They had 4 different senior day events going on at Mars Hill within, not even a half mile, a quarter-mile radius. And there were people everywhere on Saturday. And Rick was saying, this is what we want these, young people to come here, get their education, but also have the experience. And that's what they're focused on. Enrollments are down in some places. Mars Hill's still doing well, but there's other schools. I think Wingett's one of them where their enrollment just bottomed out because kids are leaving after year one. Mm-hmm. And they're not finding that experience other than education or in addition to. And that's incredibly important for development of life and skills, right? For the longest time, all we heard in public education was your education is the most important thing. You should never. That's not necessarily true. It's extremely important. But the overall holistic experience is what makes it right and develops you to be able to work with and for people and even for yourself and get out in the world and adjust.
There are things outside of education that you learn that help make you a better person.
And a butt chewing is one of them.
Yeah. Travis brought a great point here. He said the problem with college football is everyone can be bought. No integrity or morals and leadership anymore.
And it's not their fault.
Well, and the other thing,
that's because it's just things just happen.
Well,
college football, it's like
I keep saying this.
You go through the office building trying to find who's in charge, and you can't.
I don't watch soccer. Okay, you probably do. And
I watch some of
the Premier League is, all that kind of stuff. One of the greatest things that the Premier League does that I think would be excellent in college football is you can earn your way to the next level. They've got teams. They got different scales.
Right.
The top teams are up here. But if you suck for a few years and a team at the next level is doing better than you are, they can move in there for your spot, and you drop down.
Oh, from a competitor. I understand what you're saying.
The whole team.
Yes, the whole See,
like your franchise just got demoted.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Either you stay here or get out.
In college football, that's what I've said all along. The absolute max that you should have in the upper tier, of college football is 32 teams. Those 32, everybody thinks they're one of those 32 teams, but you're not. And have the same thing. Out of those 32 teams, the bottom 4 can switch every year. Well, what about schedules? Well, whoever you were going to play, they're going to play. And whoever they're going to play, you're going to play. Give somebody an opportunity to play for it and earn it.
Yeah, and that's the problem. There has to be a hierarchy standard, for things. That doesn't mean that people are mistreated that are at this standard here and this one. Or the problem is a lot of human, things. Look down at your nose and, it's like somebody getting a degree from somewhere and then looking at somebody that doesn't have one. I put a post out on Facebook a few days ago about this lady that says, there were 6 people lined up, and she looks at this guy that, basically they're all 21, 22, 23 years old, and she says, well, I've got my master's in this, and I've done this, and so they were saying who's the smartest, and they were trying to get each one to explain why they were smarter. And she's like, well, he didn't go to school and he doesn't have a degree, but he owns his own business. But, I'm much smarter. So then they gave him all an IQ test, and she finished dead last. And the guy that she said wasn't very smart finished second.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what happens is when you start doing your thing about earning your way through, a lot of times people look down on things, and not everybody does. I'm saying, but it just happens. And that's the reason they're trying to blend and merge things and get them in. But you can't do that.
Right.
Because excellence is excellence. And then they try to, things are trying to be turned into, this group says, they start grouping people. You can't do that, right? You get 3 different colored eggs together. A friend of mine that lives in Wilmington, she put a post out, and I shared it. She had 3 different eggs on her counter, showed them all cracked and sitting in a frying pan. All the eggs looked the same. You couldn't tell which egg came from, you couldn't tell which one it came from.
Right.
And that's kind of the whole point. But some eggs were bigger, some were smaller, and they were different colors, right? You still have to have a hierarchical standard, but it's based on excellence and not, the other metrics. And you have to have opportunity, like Lenny said, to move up. The problem is when you start capping things and putting glass ceilings in. Can't do that.
Or when you not to get on my not to get that hole open that I can't get out of it. When they started doing all this stuff, trying to be inclusive of teams and people's feelings and that kind of thing, instead of just looking at a team and saying, you're not one of the best 32 teams. When you get there, we'll put you back in.
Who was
But
undefeated
you're
a few
not.
years ago? Was it South Florida or UF? Was it
UCF, Central Florida.
I'm sorry. They play in the SEC. They're not a 500 team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people will argue that, and that's okay. But they don't play that schedule.
That's where if you go back,
to
RPI and that kind of stuff, where you have the same measurables,
Yeah.
it takes it into consideration. You're undefeated, but
who did you play?
you've got the 135th hardest schedule out of 300.
And it's not true.
You would even come close.
It's the reason Clemson basketball used to start 17-0.
That's correct.
And then they would end up
That's exactly-
17-14.
That's correct.
By the time the ACC tournament got
and it wasn't because they weren't that they weren't playing hard, and it was the measurables that came into play. And it's incredibly
Competition doesn't tell lies.
I heard this one time in high school. Well, you are what your record says you are. That's not necessarily
Maybe.
true. That's a great statement, but that's one that's repeated that's heard a lot. I'm just repeating that because I really don't know what it means, but I just heard it and it sounds good. No, that's not true. Because I can take a football team, all right, and play Pisgah and Asheville. I'm talking about, let's just say when I was coaching at Madison, right? Pisgah, Asheville, Irwin, North Buncombe, and I can go 0-4 against those teams, which are great teams, and not get in my conference league. Or I did it at Maiden with our baseball team. I played the toughest teams. I play to win a bunch of games.
I get it real close to home. Mount Pleasant showed us that in the first round of the
That's
playoffs
it,
one year.
baby.
But that's the
Nobody
but
had a
here's
better
the-
record than Maiden.
But that's
But
what I'm
Mount Pleasant
saying.
was a better
When you
football
talk
team.
about measurables, you got to have some kind of formula that you can compare,
Right.
Because you don't have the
Exactly.
head-to-head.
That's why that phrase doesn't work.
You'll see teams with worse records do better and get better or ranked higher because of who they played, even though they didn't win. There's a thing called good losses and bad losses.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something
It
to
is
that.
what it is.
How many state championships have Shelby and Reedsville won at 8-4, 9-3?
Right.
Look at exactly.
And 12-0 teams.
Yeah.
Are gone.
Third round,
Lincoln's
second round.
another one that for years they had one of the toughest non-conference
yeah.
schedules because they played
South
They
Point.
played Shelby, they played South Point. I mean,
Sometimes Kings them out.
Yeah,
I mean,
they played great
South Point,
competition.
South Carolina.
But when the rubber met the road later on, you could
saw
tell
it.
they played
You saw
those
the
teams.
difference. Yeah,
That's the whole point in preparation for championship play versus you are what your record says you are.
Yep.
That's only if it's in the same league at the end
They
of the year.
played
You
the
played
thir-
all the same teams.
They
Then
played
your record is what it is.
They played the three best teams they'd play at the beginning.
And
You won't see anybody better than the three you
and
just
get
played.
wore out.
well, that's
not
why.
every time, but
That's why when they do the RPI ranking now that Max Preps does,
Right.
I like it better because
Oh, yeah.
all of that's taken into consideration. And here's the key word that so many people don't use and don't do. You got to take the entire body of work. The entire body of work has to be measurable, and you got to be able to
Exactly.
sort it out against other things. I'm going to take one more break, and when we come back, we're going to go to Andrew's favorite topic. We're going to talk Caleb Williams. Have you thought about when you would like to retire? One of your major assets is planning for retirement is time, and you lose a
Whether it's a sit-down meal or a call-in for the drive-thru, Brookwood Cafe and Catering is the answer. A variety of meats, vegetables, and desserts cooked daily or a hot sandwich from the grill, they have what you're looking for to satisfy your taste buds. If you need catering from 5 to 500, Brookwood has you covered as well. Stop by Brookwood Cafe and Catering at 202 Providence Mill Road in Maiden. Don't forget breakfast daily till 11 a.m. Open Tuesday 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., Wednesday through Saturday 6 a.m. till 8 p.m., and Sunday from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Call 828-428-8944 to place your order today.
If you ask around, you'll find Burke Mortuary has a reputation for excellence and commitment to value. They've built a reputation of trust for more than 35 years. Burke Mortuary is proud to offer personal attention, meaningful tributes, and the area's most affordable prices. They're also proud to offer you beautiful, state-of-the-art facilities. It's the perfect place to honor your loved one. So when choosing a funeral home, the choice is easy. Choose Burke Mortuary with locations in Maiden and Newton.
Covenant Church began as a vision of just over 100 people in 1984. Since then, Covenant Church has grown and currently located at 2168 Gastonia Highway in Lincoln. The Sunday schedule includes early morning worship at 8:30, Sunday school at 9:45, and morning worship at 10:45. Their ministries extend beyond Sunday. Visit their website at www.covenantchurch.church to see all they have to offer, and better yet, stop by and see for yourself. Covenant Church may be just what you're looking for a new church home. First Federal Savings Bank has been serving Lincoln County since 1940. And as it has been from the beginning, customer service is a priority to First Federal Savings Bank. They want to get to know you by name. First Federal Savings Bank has the convenience, the products, and the services that the larger banks have, but with hometown people that you see throughout your community. Stop in and visit one of their 4 convenient locations and see what First Federal Savings Bank has to offer you. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Untangling your headphones, finding the right remote, saying goodbye to your favorite shirt that hasn't fit in 10 years. Why are simple things sometimes so complicated? Thankfully, with auto owners, insurance doesn't have to be one of them. Auto Owners works with independent agents who live in your community and answer when you call, so you can worry about more important things, like finding a new favorite shirt. That's simple human sense.
Call Mooney Insurance in Maiden or East Lincoln Insurance in Denver, or visit mooneyinsurance.com. Have you thought about when you would like to retire? One of your major assets is planning for retirement is time, and you lose a little of it each day. The longer you wait to start accumulating capital for retirement, the harder it's going to be. How should you plan for retirement? Start by calculating approximately how much capital you will need at retirement, and then estimate how much you will have to put away each year. Finally, carefully choose the investments in which you will invest. Stiefel Nicholas can assist you. Call 4 Rembert today at 828-624-7300. Stiefel Nicholas, member SIPC, and the New York Stock Exchange. And we're back. And you didn't have the what. I took care of that for you.
But to that point,
yes.
To that point, before we go to Caleb Williams,
okay,
and what we were just talking about off the air, okay. When I was talking to Rick Baker, he was telling me about the Mars Hill football coaches. All of them been there since like '93.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've had a few guys come on, but they've all melded together. He said, Ford, they have changed over the years the way they coach, because he said even 5 years ago, Coach Clifton said, I can't coach like I did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. He said, but what I do, and he said, what Coach Clifton does, he knows every player on the team. The 140 some kids they got, and he knows their mother, and he never talks to any of them about football. He says, I'm sorry to hear about your dog, or hey, I'm sorry to hear about your grandma. He talks to them about the person, and that's what Andrew and I were talking about, just back and forth about Elko at Duke and the guys that he had and how much they invested into the people there, mm-hmm. and not just the player there, right? And what Rick Baker was telling me is he felt like that's why Mars Hill had such. Kevin Barnett's the defensive coordinator at Mars Hill. He's one of the finest people I've ever met in my life. I've known Kevin for 25 years. He's from Madison County, and he is one of the finest people I've ever met. And I just really think that is where the focus is tending to go, and it normally starts at the smaller level, like the Division II, and then works its way up, because things don't necessarily trickle down anymore like they did, because when you base things on quality and value, it builds up and drives up. And hopefully, we'll see that start happening more and more, kind of like I think Coach Sweeney does at Clemson. I just believe that.
We were talking a little bit about Caleb Williams, and where I want to go is it's not only what quarterbacks go. One of the questions came up yesterday on Cowherd was which one of the top 5 picks in this year's draft will be a bust? Okay, which one? Because there's going to be one. That's the way it always works. Do you know what his answer was? Whatever quarterback goes to the Washington Commanders, because they're not built to take a young quarterback and him find success. So many places are like that. The draft is good because you're trying to build up the teams with the worst records. But that means if they've got the worst record, they've got some other issues there, and you're going to take top talent and not give them anything to work with.
Exactly.
And now, from a quarterback standpoint, you go back to Sam Darnold and Rosen and some of these guys, they went into such dysfunctional teams, they had no prayer of being able to play and be successful. Now, Caleb Williams, my only concern with him has never been athleticism. It's been maturity and how will he handle all the adversity, because you hadn't seen adversity till you get to the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not even going to be close. Other top quarterbacks, I think Jaden Daniels can make it.
Yep.
I think Drake May can make it on the right team, but if he goes to Washington, he ain't got a prayer.
There's a lot of people screaming bust on Drake May now.
Oh, I've never seen it. I've never seen it, but he's going to have to go to a team that he can set for a year and learn. He's got the talents, but he's still got some places that he needs some work on.
The one that nobody talks about is Bo Nix. He's the one that's been tested more than anybody and has persevered.
Yeah.
He's the guy that's going to end
and
up
not
being like
just
Justin.
in football.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. He's the guy that's like Herbert. He's the unsung hero that's going to emerge. I still think May is going to have a better career than Daniels or Williams.
Well, May's more talented than Bo Nix, probably. Fresh, just looking at talent, raw throwing ability, running, whatever. I get it. But I guarantee you I can about guess what Bo Nix's reaction is going to be in any situation.
Exactly.
Drake May, I have no idea what he's going to do.
Well, I
know what he's going to try to do, but
I think in his defense, we saw this year, just like we did in Sam Howell, how tough it was in that extra year after the great year and how they handled themselves. That tells you what you're going to see at the next level. I've not seen Daniels or Williams have to react to any kind of failure at a major level, all right, because of the standard that's set at USC or lack thereof right now. So even though they had losses, it really wasn't that big a deal because they weren't really considered that big a deal. All right, we didn't see anything at LSU because they won a ton of games. There was really no pressure applied that can be like kind that you would see in the NFL in situations with those top two players. I like them and I want them to do very well, but that's just looking at those. How do you react to situations? It's not the situation, it's how you react to it. We don't know with Daniels, or we've seen stuff with Williams, but in comparison to the level that's expected versus what's happening. We've seen it in May. We've seen it in Nix. Penix, I'm not sold on because I think his elbow's too low in throwing the football. That matters because it didn't help Vince Young any. And
is it Penix or Nix that's had the ACLs?
Oh, it's Penix.
It's Penix.
Oh, God.
He's had two, if I'm not mistaken.
He's had a ton of knee surgeries, dude.
Well, the top quarterback positions is Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix at number 6. That's
what does
top
McCarthy
6.
bring to the table? Okay, he's a national champion.
Yeah.
But what does he bring to the table? I think he's very athletic, very talented, very smart player. He's gained weight, but we don't know.
I think he's much more level-headed than Caleb Williams.
Well,
100%.
But here's the deal.
100%.
And a lot of these, so much, especially on a quarterback, their ability to find success is going to be by what team they land on. If you land on a bad team that doesn't have anything to work with, then you're going to struggle to be successful, especially if you're a quarterback like Jaden Daniels or you're a quarterback like Caleb Williams. You haven't faced the adversity from your environment that you have.
Well, I look at Caleb Williams, the little bit of adversity he had going into this last season was the pressure to beat a man because it was Caleb Williams Caleb Williams out the whole offseason. Then I see him up crying in the stands after games, losing games they shouldn't lose, statistics awful at times. And I'm thinking, man, if that guy had that little bit of pressure about you're the man and you couldn't handle it, that next level pressure is going to be
when you watch post-game comments and you see quarterbacks go to the podium and you see their composure, regardless of whether it was a huge win or a huge loss, that tells you what kind of quarterback and where their head is.
Which is what I see in McCarthy and Nix.
Right.
See, this is how. Okay. When you line things up, all right. Adversity has to be present at some degree so you can measure how things are being handled, right? Who is the young man that is it Hartman that went from Wake to?
Yeah, Sam Hartman.
Yeah. Okay, all right,
and he's on the list.
He is okay. So where does he fall in all this with the things that he did at a smaller school, and then went on the big stage? Where does he fall?
Well,
is he more
based
comparable
on his grade? Based on his grade, he's the 12th quarterback in the draft.
How can they say? Let me ask you this: is the boy from Tennessee ahead of him?
Yes.
All right.
He's
is the
10th.
boy? How about the what? Is the kid from BYU even on there at all?
He's above him too, just one above him. Slovis, BYU is one above.
Tennessee's 10 to be.
Oh
11,
my
and
God!
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, what we got in these rankings here is the same thing that we saw with the kid that plays at the Jets, that came from BYU.
Yeah, Wilson. Is it?
Not Zach Wilson.
Yeah,
Is
that's what I'm
Zach
talking
Wilson.
about. Really?
But here's the deal.
Really? I mean, did they?
The Jets aren't set up to take a quarterback that needs development time. That's the problem.
They are now.
I think the Green Bay
They are now.
Packers showed you with love what the secret is.
Well,
Those
they
guys
all do.
just gotta
Go
wait.
back, and
get it right before they go on the field.
go back. Andy Reid. You know, he set what we think now is maybe the greatest quarterback to ever play, and he set him for a year behind Alex
and
Smith.
wanted to sit him 2 to 3.
Yeah.
so
Right.
he could just make sure. But
He just developed
so quick.
And
Too quick.
Jordan
He didn't have a
Love.
choice.
Jordan Love was the same thing.
Right.
And Alex Smith will tell you that. Alex said, this kid comes in, he's like, holy cow. He said, I know where, and, with the thing with Mahomes, him being a professional athlete at 12 years old because he's hanging out with his dad, who's a pro baseball player, around professional athletes, it allowed him to elevate mentally so much quicker in a very crazy, hyper-intensive environment with all these fast guys running at you.
Which was the same explanation I just saw for the Holiday kid, the major league that they moved up to the Orioles.
Yes, the shortstop, his boy, Matt's boy.
Being in that environment his entire life.
Let me tell you something, man.
As soon as he got in it, he excelled.
Guys, it's like Ken Griffey Jr., okay?
Not to change that.
No,
to
you
sports.
didn't know it's the same thing. It's the point to that. It's like Ken Griffey Jr., right? When he was 18 years old, 17 years old, he was ready to play in the majors from a mental standpoint. And he played on the same team with his daddy for a little while, right? The same day with the Holiday kid coming up, same thing with him coming up to the majors this young. This kid is 100% ready. There is no doubt that he can handle it mentally. He's just got to, go out and do his thing, and he's going to do that. That's what concerns me. And I want all these players to be successful. But when we objectively evaluate things and we say, okay, what are the chances they are versus they aren't, top picks have really not done that well.
Who were the
in
6,
tradition.
7, 8 quarterbacks on that list? Just
I'll give you the rundown.
I can't see it.
The top 6 was Williams, Daniels, May, McCarthy, Nix, and Penix, top 6.
Yeah.
The next 6 is Spencer Rattler, Michael Pratt, Devin Leary, Kentucky, Milton out of Tennessee, Slovis out of BYU, Hartman out of Notre Dame, Jordan Travis out of Florida State.
which
Carter,
might be one of the better of that bunch.
he got an overall grade of 37.
I mean,
Carter Bradley out of South Alabama, Austin Reed out of Western Kentucky, and Plumlee out of Central Florida. That's your top
Plumlee's
16.
good, and the kid out
He's a
of
basketball player.
and the
Plumlee.
kid out of is it Western or Eastern Kentucky?
Western.
What's his
Austin
last name?
Reed.
Reed. Yeah, he's
So it brings me to the point I was going to go before we ran out of time. Is how many years do we do what we've always done and take a quarterback at the beginning of this thing, and waste all those top picks on quarterbacks, and then they just.
yeah. I mean,
Depends on where they go.
Cleveland Browns. I still say to this day that franchise would have been in much better shape to go ahead and take Tebow and just run with it for 7 or 8 years.
Well,
There
here's the
wouldn't be-
deal.
There wouldn't be any dysfunction.
The top 3 teams in the draft, the top 3 positions in drafting, all need a quarterback. The Bears, Commanders, the Patriots.
That's
They
because
don't
they
have
gave theirs up.
I know.
They
Yeah,
gave up the guy that.
And then here's another
the
thing.
Bears already danced this dance like 2 or 3 years ago.
Here's another thing. The Cardinals may be looking to take one because they're not sure on Kyler Murray.
Who is?
I know.
I mean, look at the way that he interacted. I tell you
But
what.
I think of Kyler Murray, the 6 or 7 at the front. Is there somebody better before you
Right now,
throw
no.
him out?
Right now, no.
I mean, at least I'd rather dance with the one I know that I.
It's like
We
getting
talk
rid of.
about that often.
It's like getting rid of coaches.
Yep.
You better have somebody in your pocket that you think's going to take it that's better than you got before you pull that trigger. And there's been some places that have been surprised. They thought that, well, we won't have any trouble filling this. This is a premier spot. And then they find out that it isn't a premier spot.
Yeah, that's why when I've said when things get shaky with Dabo, I'm like, well, better make sure the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah, before we start talking
before we
about-
start going over and trying to mow it or whatever
Yeah.
we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's why I say, Clemson, water your own grass.
Yeah.
You know, don't.
Let's
you
make
know,
daggum
yes.
sure we got something.
It was like Carolina, you know, or NC State. You know, continue to water your grass.
Yep.
You know, you've got good people in place there. You know,
Because the Mac is back.
you've got quality people in place, and it makes the league better because they have the best interest of the player as a person at heart. That's why Dabo did what he did at Clemson. He focused on the person that plays and develops it from that. And you can tell that because when they won the national championship, look at those boys that came back.
Mm-hmm.
Those kids could have gone straight to the NFL, but they came back because of the quality of the experience, because they knew it'd make them better longer term. And that is what I'm saying. This thing about, well, you know, yeah, but they start off, and you give Carolina an example. They start off 8 in this or 7 in this, and then they finished up this. There's a long, you know, row to hoe there. All right, it is. It's long.
Well, I'm okay with that. I told you I'm okay with that. But
It's developmental parts and
but
quality.
The problem that I have seen, okay, is he doesn't think that there's another player that's better than anything he's ever recruited, and he misses sometimes.
Correct.
Everybody does. Everybody does.
Yeah.
That's where,
Yeah.
to me, that's where the portal comes in
Oh, you're talking about
because
Coach Sweeney.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
or
Okay,
anybody,
yeah,
anybody.
Yeah, has he
once you
missed
realize-
a national championship run the last 2 or 3 years just because there was 2 guys in that portal that would have gave him what they needed?
Right. I'm not saying you build
Right.
a team from that, but
You never
out
can
of-
touch
out
one
of-
up with it.
Out of picking all these players by position, sometimes you're going to miss, and
Yep.
you got to be, you know, as you said before, the hardest thing for anybody to do is admit they made a mistake and try to correct it instead of doubling down.
But I
on the
really
mistake
believe,
and
Lanny,
doubling down.
very good points, but I really believe in Coach Sweeney's situation. It was more of a staffing issue than it was a player issue. I believe we had people trying to do things with players that players were incapable of doing, and he's righted that now. I think that was the issue. He
Yeah.
gave internal opportunity. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But what happened was, the byproduct of that was, it wasn't the best that was available, therefore the team suffered. Okay,
Yeah.
he learned from that, I
Well, he
think.
won those national championships, and then probably 3 of the best coordinators that there have been in the
Well,
last 15
and the
years
thing-
walked.
Just like at
Hard to fix.
Bama. And what Saban showed was, I don't care if they've been here or not, I'm going to get the best I
guy.
can find.
But you have to
Okay.
be willing to do that for
Yeah.
anything inside your organization.
Dabo's loyal all the way to a fault. Maybe
Correct,
maybe to a
correct.
double fault.
That is-
But
yeah,
I'll
but
tell you
it's-
this, I don't see it as a fault.
Right.
I just see it as an unsuccess and a learning thing, because his loyalty is what's got him where he is, and elevated the people around him the way he's done it. Now he has to refine his process.
Right.
Which he's done, and that's why I tell you
yeah,
what,
I think
boys,
long run loyalty will win out.
because I
works.
think you learn through it through truth. You say, you know what,
Yep.
you've been in my organization, I'm going out and hiring this person because they're better right now than you are, but we want to continue to elevate your growth as a coach or as a player, whatever, to get here, and I think you're up front with that. That's why the last 4 or 5 months I told Lanny, I said, I'm starting to get on the, you know, I'm not a Clemson fan, right? I went to East Carolina, God bless us, you know.
That's why he brought Chris Rumpf back. Rumpf and Dabo didn't have the best parting at the end.
Right.
Rumpf basically left. He said, I don't think we can win here.
Mm-hmm.
And he left. And Dabo won 2 national championships with
Right.
us. Yeah, but the loyalty and the,
But
you know,
you
all
learn.
right,
You
so
learn.
you give them a
People
second
make
opportunity.
mistakes.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
But you have to be able to make changes and recognize.
Well, I'm excited
that you've
about
made
it.
That you've made a mistake.
I just think that there's better days ahead for the people that stick to quality and
I
value
agree.
of things instead of the latest, greatest, newest thing. Let me go get this. Let me go get this one. Let me go get that one.
Go back to my pendulum. When you're
It's
up
gonna
here,
swing.
you can't
man.
swing it too far. You got to kind of come back, and you do it gradually. But you can't just keep.
Yeah, because when
bucking
it starts coming back, it gets moving in a
That's
hurry.
exactly
Well,
right.
people get really upset, and that's a good point. People get upset about the way sports go. Our elections, politics, and all this. Right. What we have to remember is our founding fathers set it up so that pendulum would swing, but with checks and balances
Right.
everywhere. That's why no one person, per se, can destroy. Like you're going to destroy the country and all that.
Right.
No, it's set up for debate, right? It's set up for that. The way that your politicians are put in, the way the judges are put in, all of these things were set so debate stays alive. They want controversy in this. The problem is we've had so much of that in the NCAA the last 15 years that has swung so far that now people like me that are lifelong fans and really love watching college football on Saturday, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to spend my college Saturdays watching Mars Hill, Lenore Ryan, Gardner Webb, until they fix this. I'm not sitting in front of a TV anymore and going, wow, I can't wait for the Alabama and LSU game. I'm not doing it because it's like, well, these 18 players moved in from this other school.
Well, that's why we let go of our season tickets for that very reason.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
I mean, it got to the
not
point
doing
where
it.
you're going to pay that kind of money
I'm not
to,
going
to watch this crap show all the time.
I mean,
all
this
mess
player's
going on.
great. Yeah, but you didn't develop him, you bought him. That's not what intercollegiate,
Yeah.
supposedly, amateur athletics is about. That's not what it is.
It's
But
gonna
that's what
change. It's just
becoming.
gonna take time.
I'm not doing. I'm going back to what I enjoy watching.
Right.
Which I can do. I have a right to do that. Okay. I'm not downing anybody. What I'm saying is, I'm going to make other choices.
That's what it should be.
Yeah,
and that's
done
where
with it.
this stuff at the highest levels is going to get fixed, because when it starts to affect the wallet.
Well, I was going to say once your pure bloods and your backbone crowd starts to move,
yeah.
that dollar figure and viewership will start to come down.
And your big donors don't like the way you're spending their money. It's when
things
it's
change
gonna-
in a hurry.
It's just like NASCAR. The focus was lost on loyalty.
Yep.
And so the sport said, boom.
Yep.
Okay. Now what are they doing?
Their viewership's going crazy.
You know why?
They went back to North Wilkesboro.
And they,
People try to tell them.
yeah, but we can get these TV contracts over here, and we can. There's
The guys-
no loyalty there.
The guys
It's all
that
based
carry
on
their coolers
experience.
into the racetrack every week's been trying to tell them for
Oh, I know.
It's
years.
based on experiences.
Listen.
Now, instead of loyalty, the experiences from the loyalty one.
Well, the
it's
other
just
thing
sitting
that-
in the box seat, that's great. but
When you
no,
look at it, the thing that you have to understand, and everybody says there's no predictor of the future. There's not, but the past is a very good indicator of where you're going if you don't make changes, if you're not doing it right. All
go
right,
this way, baby.
we're out. Have a great day. Thanks for coming in, Andrew.
Yep.